soundtrack, for instance. We had a big concert in Paris with 4 of the 7 musicians coming over. So we had video filmed and things about what happened in Paris. So that was one way of having people talk about the game that didn't spoil the game itself, but still built on the quality of the music and all of that. Then we also had Takashi Okazaki. The work with him was also a big focus that we would always mention. He's done some specific interviews later on in the making of and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then after, when the game was launched, it was also continuing to bring fresh products and fresh ideas about the game, like the vinyl, the LP version of the soundtrack, or the posters, or all the merch, and having a DLC after the game launched. And even earlier this year, we had several free updates. We added some modes. Recently, we added the safe mode that lets people play pass very difficult games, so that people who didn't want to have such a skill-based game could still enjoy the story. So we kept adding stuff, and we're still planning to add some more to Fury for next year. But that's a bit of a surprise that we're keeping for next year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really that's good to know, and I definitely think, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, like the soundtrack. Even like in my circle of friends of mine who played the game, or even I have some friends who haven't played it at all, who don't play video games, who in their Spotify playlists have songs from the Fury soundtrack. So it was definitely a big hard hitter. For a lot of us when it came out. So that's very interesting to know. That was such a big part of the marketing push.
And then to be honest, the soundtrack was a very good seller. I don't have really references, but I've heard that it was among the best game soundtrack sellers for a long time, even comparing to AAA games. But I don't have the figures of the others, but that's what I've been told. But the thing is that we actually have people coming to the game because they heard the soundtrack. And I think this is very rare. This is very unusual. Yeah, it means we really had something going on with that soundtrack, something magical. Some people just talk about the soundtrack and then they discover the game, which is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned that, and then earlier you also said like the story, the reception of the story was something that surprised you, or at least like you were pleasantly surprised with it. So, I mean, as you kind of think back on the game's critical success, like what was, your response, or even your, if you can speak for others on your team as well, like what was the response to that positive feedback, and what were some things you would maybe attribute that to?
No, I think we were very happy that it turned out that people enjoyed that game we were preparing for them, because we really were coming with something special. We knew it was a little bit different, and we knew also there was a taste for this kind of very skill-based games that were not so. There's not so many of so many games like Fury. Basically, it's kind of a special one. There's not many like that. There's a few that come every year that come and feeling that need that people have to do a bit difficult skill-based game and to challenge themselves. But we pushed this idea so far. You only have 4 buttons, and you don't learn anything. You just have to master those 4 buttons and the timing, and understand the boss's patterns all along the game. We pushed it so far that we were very happy to see that the reception was so good. Some people actually told us, "I've been waiting for a game like Fury for 10 years." I mean, it was very, very, very touching for all of us to see that the people got it and they liked it. But on the other hand, Fury is a success, but we didn't sell as many copies as Dead Cells or Cuphead or Celeste. So we still have a way to go to be a successful indie developer. Unfortunately, the fact that we were free for a month on PlayStation, we will never know how much we would have sold if we didn't do that. We will never know. But we didn't. It wasn't a huge financial success the first year. The thing that kept going was the fact that Fury kept selling. It brought us a lot of financial stability in the end. But the first year, we were not sure. I mean, when it launched on Steam and we had 0 sale on PlayStation, I can tell you we were not very happy at Game Bakers. Because it wasn't like a gigantic hit from the start either, right? We had to go through lots of promotion on Steam to make the game visible, and then the word of mouth kicked in, and then we started to sell, and then there was the Switch version that really worked well too, and all the deals we did here and there, the limited run, and and all of this built Fury to bring more than 2 or 3 times his initial investment back to us as net. So that's good. That's how we made our next games. But it's not a huge financial success like Dead Cell or Celeste.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also a very interesting point that you make, and I think it's something that we, haven't really talked about very much previously. Is kind of the benefit of longevity, and I think a lot of the time, like we, when we talk about indie games and their marketing and their success, even it is often a discussion of like the game comes out and it makes you like $1 billion, and then everybody just gets to make games for the rest of forever. But it does go so far beyond that, where it's like, well, making the game and even getting the game to launch is really just a very small fraction of the battle, so to speak. There is still ongoing marketing campaigns, keeping track of things like your analytics and seeing, where you can kind of influence that, even in the long term, and then, potentially porting to other platforms and things like that, finding out what your game is a good fit for, which, like, for the Switch, it kind of seems like these days everything is, so that's really exciting. I think you touched on a really excellent point there.
Yeah, I think not all games are designed to last, but Fury is, because first, it's a very unique proposition. There are not many like that, and 2, the whole art direction and the stylized version of the game, the fact that it's not going to age so much, because it's not like, like a super highly realistic art direction that would already take 2 years or 5 years next year when the next gen. It will always look the same. It will go across the age, a bit like pixel art or whatever. So it won't age too bad also. And the music, and is a third thing that is bringing it huge longevity. This game is amazing. It's still selling so much after all those years.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, where what Mustafa was just saying and what you're saying. I think this still goes all back in terms of longevity. It goes right back to what you were saying in the very beginning of this discussion. Is simply it comes down to intent and clear focus and everything. Because I think because you guys had that so defined and so well defined, it carries over to what we were just talking about in terms of like your pre-campaign, marketing strategies and stuff, and your marketing plan, and your post-launch strategies and everything, and the longevity of it. If I were to attribute it to one thing, and a lot of the stuff we talked about, I would have to say, just my guess anyways, my take would be, it goes down to the intent and focus. And because it was so clear and defined, it really helped kind of shape everything else moving forward, and gave you kind of like almost a springboard to some degree to get to where you are now, and kind of give you that insight pushing forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, with that being said, and with I think that insight being the core of our discussion here, I do kind of want to. I think we're getting to the point where we're about ready to wrap up. So want to revisit some of what we've discussed and maybe see if we can, break things down into some key takeaways. But before we do that, if there was any one thing, that as you think back on the project that you might have done differently if you have the chance to take it from the top, do it all over with Fury, is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, I think we pushed the release date a little bit to add more time in playtesting and debugging. And I think if we'd push it like 2 more months or 3 maybe, we would have really pushed the level of Fury one step higher. Because a lot of the frustration you get from Fury is actually by design and intended. It's part of the experience, right? You get frustrated and then you beat it and you're happy because you have been frustrated with the boss. But some of it, we could have tweaked it a little bit better. There's a few things we fixed, we've improved, and you can see it in the latest versions of the game. We've improved a lot of those little things that could have been a bit annoying at the beginning. So that's what we would have done. We would have spent maybe 2 or 3 more months playtesting and polishing and improving the game. Yeah, without changing the formula though.
Yeah. All right. Understood. So like kind of the just fixes, quality of life type of things.
Yeah, fixes on the difficulty curve, the accessibility. Then so many people told us your parry button doesn't work. It's just on release. But maybe we could have clarified that so people would know. Oh yeah, it's on release. I get it. Something we could have done a bit better. The accessibility, the teaching, the learning part of the game.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess now kind of switching gears just a little bit, what do you want our audience to know about your team's next big project, or is there anything that you would kind of want to sort of advertise or speak to here?
Yeah, well, as we said, Game Bakers, we make games that are experienced, and we believe that we're here to surprise people. So we could have done Fury 2. It would have been, from everything we discussed together, it would have been a much more polished game, a better game. But it was also certainly have been much less surprising because we believe there can only be like one Fury. Like one time you meet that game and you go, what? And then if we'd done Fury 2, yeah, it would be great, but it would be just a bit more of the same. So we decided to do something completely different, and we are doing an RPG that's a love story that you can play solo or with 2 people. And it's really the complete opposite direction. So we're going for a moment of respiration and peace and relaxation with a couple of lovers that hopefully will also make you smile. It's called Heaven. I didn't say the name. It's called Heaven too, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, that sounds really exciting, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for it on our end. And usually within our show notes when we upload the show, we'll have contact information or websites or whatever you would prefer, so people can access that information. So to close. We went over a lot today, so I guess if we were to kind of break that down, refine it into maybe 5 kind of key takeaways, what would that look like for you? Like, what are 5 things you would want maybe aspiring developers or people who want to be able to create meaningful experiences like Fury? Like, what would you say to those people based on what we've discussed today?
But I think the first thing is to dream big, right? It's exactly what we've done for the music and for the character design. We looked at the people we love the most in the world and we contacted them. And like many people are always like, oh, what did you do? How did you? Yeah, of course I wrote to Daft Punk and they didn't answer. But all the other ones answered. I mean, and we had even bigger names than the one we ended up signing with. We had Vitalik, we had Jean-Michel Jarre, we had Birdie Nam Nam. We had so many big names that said yes and were interested. So dream big and go for the best and what you really have in mind, and at least try. Maybe it won't work. Maybe you'll get the second best, but yeah, just do it. That's the first thing I want to tell people. And the other thing is just stop trying to do everything. You're just killing yourself. If you're an indie dev and you're trying to do all of those things that you see in other games that are so cool and you would love to have in your game, you're just going to kill yourself, or you're going to spend 10 years making your game. So try to focus your work, and your game will still going to be exceptional if you don't have NPCs and story branching and open world. Just find whatever defines the core of your proposition, what is going to make your game outstanding, and people are going to notice it for that, and just work on that. Of course, if you get the chance to work on more, do it. But yeah, I would advise to do less in indie games and just make it better. What we do, this is what we do, at least for Fury and also for Heaven. Those are two, right? I only have two takeaways.
Yeah,
I need
one
five.
more. Well, nah, you don't have to go to five, but like if you have one more that you think would be helpful, that'd be awesome.